In August of 1951, a fire lookout named Dale Herron sat alone in a tower on Cutler Peak, in the National Forest country of western Montana, and at 2 in the morning he radioed the dispatcher to report a fire on the northwest ridge, 7 miles out, bearing 315. A spotter plane went up at dawn and found nothing. No smoke, no flame, no scar. The next night, at 2 Herron reported the same fire, same bearing, same distance. Again the plane found nothing. On the third night he reported it once more, and this time he added a sentence that the dispatcher wrote down verbatim, because it frightened her, and then Dale Herron was never heard from again. Stay with me, because the fire he kept reporting did eventually exist. The problem is when. Herron was not a nervous man. He was 34, a veteran, in his 4th season on Cutler Peak, and his logs from previous years are models of the trade, bearings, smoke color, wind, all business. Lookouts in those days lived by the Osborne Fire Finder, a sighting instrument mounted in the center of the tower, and a bearing from a competent lookout was treated as fact. So when his first report came in, dispatch logged it as a confirmed smoke and rolled a crew toward the northwest ridge. The crew hiked half the night and stood at dawn on the exact spot, 7 miles out on bearing 315, in green, unburned, dew-wet forest. There was nothing there. There had never been anything there. Herron did not take it well, but not in the way you might think. He was not embarrassed. He was insistent. He told the dispatcher he was looking at it while she told him it wasn't there, a low orange line of fire along the ridge, flame lengths of a few feet, creeping, and he read her the bearing off the fire finder twice. The second night, the same. A relief lookout on a neighboring peak, 12 miles south, was asked to check the same ridge and reported it dark. 2 towers, 1 ridge, and only one of them could see it burning. On the third night, August the 14th, Herron's voice on the radio was different, quiet and careful, the voice of a man narrating something rather than reporting it. The fire was at the same bearing, he said, but closer now, inside 4 miles, and moving toward the peak against the wind. And then he said the sentence the dispatcher wrote down and initialed, "It's closer now, and it isn't burning anything." She asked him to repeat and he did, word for word. The trees weren't torching, he said. The fire was moving through them and the trees were still green behind it. At 2:41 he stopped answering. The morning crew found the tower door open, the lamp burned dry, breakfast laid out for the next day, and the fire finder locked on bearing 315. There was no sign of Dale Herron on the peak, on the trails, or anywhere else, then or ever. Now the part that moved this file out of missing persons and into a drawer nobody likes to open. Late on August the 15th, the night after Herron vanished, a fire was spotted on the northwest ridge, 7 miles from Cutler Peak, bearing 315 from the tower. It was seen by the relief lookout to the south, by a highway crew, and by half a town in the valley. Crews reached it by morning, and what they walked into made no sense to a single man among them. The fire was out. Not dying, not smoldering. Out, and cold, and old. Hundreds of acres of standing dead trees, charred, weathered, silver at the tips the way burned timber gets after decades of rain and sun. Fireweed growing in the ash. A burn, every crewman agreed, that was at least a generation old, on a ridge that all of them had seen green with their own eyes the week before. The Forest Service did what forest services do, which is measure. Increment borers were brought in, and the growth rings of the trees at the edge of the burn were read, because a scar in the rings dates a fire the way a line in a ledger dates a debt. The scars all agreed. The ridge had burned in 1911. 40 years earlier. And the archives agreed with the trees, because there had been a fire on that ridge in 1911, a bad one, in the same drought August, and the file on it was still in the district office. It had killed 1 man. He was the lookout on Cutler Peak, who had stayed at his post too long, reporting the fire's advance, and whose last transmission, by heliograph in those days, had been logged at 2:17 in the morning. The two files sat in the same drawer for years, 1911 and 1951, each one impossible without the other, neither one explaining anything. A ridge that everyone saw green produced a 40-year-old burn overnight. A lookout reported a fire 3 nights before it existed, or 40 years after it existed, and walked out of a locked tower into one or the other. The search for heron lasted 3 weeks and found exactly one thing, and it was not found on Cutler Peak. On the northwest ridge, in the old burn, searchers came across the collapsed footings of the original 1911 tower, a ruin no one had visited in decades. Hanging on a rusted nail, out of the weather, were a pair of binoculars. They were herons, his service number stamped on the plate. They were clean, and dry, and focused, the searchers noted, at infinity. Cutler Peak has an automated camera on it now, one of the modern ones that watches for smoke while nobody sleeps in the tower. The Forest Service does not discuss individual sensor logs, and there is no reason it should. But a technician who serviced that camera has said, in the unbothered voice of a man reporting a fault rather than a ghost, that a few nights every August it registers a heat signature on the northwest ridge, bearing 315, 7 miles out, at 17 minutes past 2. It lasts under a minute. The overlay maps it precisely onto the 1911 burn, where there is nothing left to burn, where there has been nothing left to burn for over a century, and where, if the trees and the archives are both telling the truth, a fire once arrived 3 nights before it happened, moving slowly, against the wind, burning nothing, coming closer.